And hello. Let's have more ghost stories. My dad, right off the bat, let's have more ghost stories. Yeah, let's have more ghost stories. Boy, that was fun yesterday, wasn't it? They were great stories. So great to hear, to read about, people we remember. And I have to tell you, I went to visit a couple of friends yesterday. They live in Edry Dodge and Willis Dodge's home. And boy, I couldn't stop talking about the story of Edry. And there I was sitting in her home after I read that story last night. And yeah, that was all great fun. I am going to read a Block Island story or two today. I'm not sure. And first, I want to say I'm so sorry. The one of the librarians in town, and I posted wrong to the BI bulletin. So my apologies to Fran. I wrote on the bulletin that I read from Ghost Stories of Block Island, and it's really the title of the book is Ghosts of Block Island. Let me tell you how hard it is to be a librarian and get a title wrong. And this is more Ghosts of Block Island. So Stories is not in her title, and my apologies for posting that wrong on the bulletin. But let's see, let's back up a minute. This is Frankenstein Tea, a daily short story program for adult listeners from the Island Free Library. And I am the director of the Island Free Library. I am Kristen. I'm in the library today. This is a downstairs room. This is our teen lounge. And it's turning out to be a kind of a good set. I like this set a little. I feel like it's bright and you can see me and you can hear me, and a couple of interesting things on the wall behind me. So I'm liking this room, which is good because I got kicked out of the other rooms. There's construction in this building, and there's a Zoom book group going on currently in one room. And so by default, this is the room I'm in, and it works out okay. I read short stories on this program as a way for us to stay connected to each other, to our community, to our family, to our friends, maybe for a little respite from a crazy time that you may be having, either due to COVID or COVID implications or protocols or policies around COVID. Are you stuck at home? Have you not seen your family? Do you not go out a lot? All those things may be happening. So please join us every day at 3 for a little connection. And, there's things, it's an election year, and there are definitely other national as well as global crises happening, whether you're concerned about climate change or equal rights or the Supreme Court nomination or who's going to be the next president. There's a lot going on. So I hope this program serves as a time for you to take a breath, have a timeout, listen to some story, maybe have some fun, have a sip of tea, have a sip of water, whatever you're having. Maybe turn off your TV, step away from your chores, step away from your desk. Whatever that looks like, and that could change every day. You could feel something different every day. Obviously, you feel something different every day, but whatever that is, when we come together here, we come together through story, and maybe share that in a healthy way. So welcome. We did have a great time yesterday. I had a great time, and I've heard from a few people. People had a great time yesterday with the Block Island ghost stories. And so I'll probably read from there today, 1, if not 2. That's what I said yesterday, and I ended up reading 4. So let's see what happens. But first, I'm going to read something from online that I found today. And I read it to my coworker, Judy Mitchell. And at first I was like, oh my God, when I read it, and she was like, what? I said, oh, it's a story I just read. And so then I read it to her and she said, well, so let's try it out on you. Let's see what you have as a reaction. This is going to be one of those times where I haven't printed it, but I believe I am still on camera. I am no longer on your screen, so I can't see me or who's joining in, but I think you can see me, and I'm going to read from here. So let's start with a story. This is called The Escaped Man by C.T. Platt. The rain was falling heavily. It was like driving through a thick curtain of water. He eased off the accelerator a little. Had to be careful driving on wild nights like these. The last thing you'd want is to have an accident or break down. You just want to be at home on these stormy nights. The thwack, thwack of the windscreen wipers was hypnotic. He stared out into the glow of the headlights. The rain sounded like white noise interference as it battered the car. He was reminded of the opening scenes of a Hitchcock film. Through the wash of the rain, he spotted a figure at the side of the road. The person wore a green parka and had their thumb jerked out. Why on earth would anyone be hitchhiking tonight? Surely you would just stay put until the morning. They must have been in a rush to get where they were going. He signaled down and pulled over. The hitchhiker climbed in. He shut the door quickly, glad to be out of the rain. He pulled his hood back and sighed. He was somewhere in his mid-20s and had wild red hair and a thick beard. Awful night, eh? Said the driver. The hitchhiker held his gaze for a long moment. Drops of rainwater trickled down his face. Yes, it is. The driver pulled out and continued through the storm. The hitcher glanced over his shoulder into the blackness behind them. You okay? The hitcher simply nodded. They drove on in silence for a short while. The BBC radio phone-in blaring out from the car's speakers filled in for conversation. They listened to the radio and their own thoughts as they moved on. Where are you headed? Asked the driver. North, the hitcher pointed. Are you traveling to visit friends? The driver couldn't tell if that was a yes or a no. He adjusted his tie nervously. The hitcher stared at him in his suit and tie. The hitcher seemed scruffy in comparison in his parka and Pink Floyd t-shirt. Do you work around here? Asked the hitcher. Yes, said the driver. I was stuck late at the office. You know how it is. No, not really. Again, they drifted into silence. The talk radio show carried on as they drove through the wind and rain. The hitcher shifted in his seat and stared out the windscreen. No music? The hitcher asked. What? Is there no music we could listen to? I like the talk radio shows. I'm not really a music fan. The hitcher's eyes glazed over for a moment. Then he spoke. I like listening to music. It calms me down. The driver said nothing. Several miles later, there was a news bulletin on the radio. The reporter tried to remain professional as she read the announcement. We are getting reports that a patient has escaped from Manchester Psychiatric Institution. The man is said to be psychopathic and is said to have a history of murder. The hitcher jabbed a finger on the button on the radio panel. Tinny pop music blurted out from the speakers. The driver stared at his passenger, his question unasked. I hate the news, answered the hitcher. It's so depressing. It brings me down. There is never any good news, is there? The driver did not reply. Don't worry, I'm not the killer, said the hitcher, fidgeting with his coat. No? Said the driver. I mean, no, of course you aren't. They drove on listening to the crappy pop music and overexcited radio DJs. The rain pounded on the car. What do you do for a living? Asked the driver. The hitcher was quiet for a moment. Then he grinned. I'm a writer. Really? How interesting. Have you had anything published? No. As yet, I'm an undiscovered artist. I'm sure you will make it. What are you working on at the moment? I'm writing a novel. Yes? It's about a serial killer. The driver did not speak. He flicked the talk radio station back on. A man was rambling on with himself about the change in days his wheelie bins were emptied. Where can I drop you? Asked the driver. The hitcher said nothing. When the driver glanced round, his passenger had his eyes closed. He was either asleep or feigning slumber. They drove on through the storm, down the snaking lanes. An hour later, the storm still growled and raged. The hitcher looked out of the window. The driver steered the car in silence. Another news bulletin came over the radio. We're getting more information on the escaped patient. The killer's name is Simon Hughes. He escaped from the Green Pastures Institute earlier this evening. Simon Hughes made his escape by changing from his hospital-issue uniform into a suit and tie, and pretending to be one of the medical staff, he stole a car and drove off. The hitcher turned to the driver. What did you say your name was? My name is Simon. The hitcher stared in shock. Simon grinned. The headlights of a passing car glinted off the knife blade in Simon's hand. Story number 1. Story number 2. Ghosts of Block Island by Fran Migliaccio. This short section is called Some Spirits on Spring Street. We're going to go tell ghost stories tonight, announced Raleigh with a big grin as the two of us seated ourselves at our favorite table at the beachhead. His remark was directed to Heather Sniffen, our waitress that evening. It was October 22nd, 2004, and Raleigh and I had been invited to tell ghost stories to a group of school students at the Island Free Library as part of a night of fright. The program was one of a series of participatory game and storytelling evenings conducted for that age group by librarian Amy Dugan. The ghost stories were to be followed by pizza, then by some ghostly story writing or storytelling on the part of the students. Ooh, Heather responded, her black fringed hazel eyes lighting up. I have some ghosts. She leaned slightly forward over our table, her long auburn brown ringlets forming a frame around her face. When I was younger, she continued, I had a summer job at the Spring House. A bunch of us kids, all about the same age, were working there that year. One thing that kept happening was that the light in the hall on the third floor of the hotel would go on by itself and stay on. No matter how often we shut it off, it would always come on again by itself. One night, a group of us got together and decided, this is it. We are going to shut off that light, and we are going to do it together so we'll all know we shut it off. So we all went to the switch for that particular light, turned it off, and made sure it was off. But the light turned itself back on anyway and stayed on. At that point, we all just decided, okay, it wants to be on, and we let it go. It was more determined than we were, and it had been there a lot longer. I used to see things at my parents' house up on Spring Street too, said Heather. Heather is the cousin of Karen Lord Carlone, who had some eerie experiences at the North Light. Heather's father, Jim, is the brother of Karen's mother, Barbara. The Sniffen house was purchased in the 1940s by Jim and Barbara's parents. continued Heather. In my parents' house, I used to see two strange people. There was a woman dressed in long, old fashioned clothes with her hair up in a bun, and there was a man in a top hat with a mustache and a black coat. Once I woke up in the middle of the night and they were there in my room. The woman was sitting in the rocking chair, rocking, and the man was standing near her. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, the two people were gone, but the chair was still rocking. Then there's the story about the chair and the attic door, Heather added. I'm not sure whether my parents or grandparents told me this. The attic has a trap door that you have to push open from the ceiling below to get inside the attic. Sometimes, when family members tried to open the trap door, the chair was directly on top of it. I guess they finally got the chair out of there so it wouldn't always be in the way. So are you getting enough ghost stories? Jim Sniffen asked me one day as we met at the door of the Block Island grocery. It was December 14th, more than a month since my conversation with Heather at the beachhead. I'd left a couple of messages inquiring about house ghosts on the Sniffin's answering machine, but it was the holiday season and everyone was busy with matters more immediate and pressing than the supernatural. What about your house? Any ghosts there? I asked him with an encouraging smile. No, Beverly doesn't think so, he told me. Heather told me she's seen things there, I replied. Oh yeah, she sees things. If Heather says we have ghosts, go right ahead and write about them, he said with a chuckle. A few days later, returning to the island from a brief trip to the mainland, I saw Beverly Sniffen aboard the Block Island. So tell me, do you have ghosts in your house? I asked her, sitting uninvited at her table. An artist and craftswoman who makes Block Island pendants of stained glass and Christmas tree ornaments from tiny starfish, Beverly was leafing through what appeared to be an arts and crafts book. I've never felt anything in the Block Island house, she replied, regarding me gravely. But in our old house in Monroe, Connecticut, there was a ghost. I used to feel her presence upstairs in my sewing room. I knew she was there, and I would say hello to her. The day we left the house, I was vacuuming downstairs, and she came down to be with me. I think she knew we were saying goodbye. The closing on the house was awful, Beverly continued. It almost didn't happen. My lawyer told me that the buyer had wanted a clause guaranteeing the absence of ghosts in the house. It didn't go into the contract, but if she'd insisted, she wouldn't have gotten that house. I really didn't want her to have it, but now that she does, I'm almost certain she can't sense the ghost's presence. I don't think she would be able to. The Monroe ghost was always a gentle presence, never anything scary, concluded Beverly. I was very aware of her. If there was anything here in our house on Block Island, I think I would know it or sense it. At the end of that December, Raleigh and I once again found ourselves at the beachhead, being seated by Heather Sniffen. She told me with a laugh, my sister Holly was here for Christmas, and my mother said to us, I don't know why Fran wants to write about this house. It's not haunted. Holly just looked at her and said, yes, it is, Mom. Like, don't you know that? I thought it was pretty funny. The Coast Guard ghost. How shall I start this Coast Guard story? Mused building official Mark Tilson, sitting in his office at Town Hall one Friday morning in April 2004. Mark is a cheerful, no-nonsense professional who deals in tangibles, boards, bricks, measurements, building specifications, zoning regulations. A self-described neatnik, he enjoys order, precision, and facts. Mark has held this position for the town for nearly 2 decades. He lives in and oversees the old Coast Guard station, situated at the end of Champlin's Road, overlooking the entrance to the Great Salt Pond. Built in 1935, the Coast Guard station is a 3-building complex, the main house, the boathouse, and an equipment shed added in 1938. The three-story main house with its prominent central light tower is best known and most conspicuous of the buildings on the property. During the summer, rooms in this building are rented to seasonal town employees. In the winter, Mark is the sole occupant, living in the ground floor apartment that he built himself. His large tomcat, Big Fuzzy Thing, keeps him company. When I first moved into the Coast Guard station, it was like any old building, with its share of creaks, bumps, noises, and things that go boo in the night, said Mark. I ignored all of them, though I did notice a reoccurring noise at the base of the tower. It sounded like somebody going up and down the tower stairs. I noticed it, but when I heard that or any other sound at night, I just pulled the covers over my head and went back to sleep. During the summers, when other people lived in the house, they reacted to the house in odd ways. A couple of the women living there were scared to go upstairs. They didn't like to be around the corridor where the tower is. Another year, on one summer day, a woman was here with her mother visiting the building. She walked upstairs but came right down again. She said she was scared to stay upstairs on the second floor. In addition to the footsteps on the tower stairs, another sound that could be heard was the sound of men's voices carrying on conversations in a low rumble. One night, I woke up and heard that noise over my head. I was about to turn over and go back to sleep, but then I noticed that my cat, who is big and looks like a Maine Coon cat, was sitting in the middle of the floor, staring up at the place where the noise was coming from. I thought that was pretty interesting, but I still went back to sleep. Very often, Coast Guard members who were once active at the Block Island station will stop by. We get these visitors every summer. A gentleman who visited the station one summer had been active there in the mid to late 1950s. He was the one who told me the Mad Cook story. He told me that the men stationed there at the time began to notice that things were missing from the kitchen, knives and silverware. They also noticed that the cook was becoming temperamental and difficult to get along with. He'd fly into rages, he'd sulk, he'd withdraw. He went into a whole pattern of irrational behavior. Eventually, he locked himself in a room on the second floor with all the knives and silverware that had gone missing from the kitchen. They tried to get him to come out, but he wouldn't respond. Finally, a ladder was placed outside for access to the window of that second floor room. They went in, restrained the cook, put him into a straitjacket, and took him away. It's interesting how stories get pieced together, a bit here and a bit there. In the summer of 2003, an elderly couple visited the Coast Guard property. The husband had been stationed here in the 1950s at about the same time as the man who told me about the Mad Cook. The Coast Guard member who visited in 2003 had unfortunately had a stroke and couldn't talk that much, but his wife was very alert and communicative. I asked if they had heard the story of the Mad Cook. Norman? She immediately exclaimed, "Oh, of course." And so, I've now named that spirit Norman, the Mad Cook, said Mark. He continued, I don't believe in ghosts. I never have. I've just always ignored the noises and gone back to sleep or back to whatever I was doing. The footsteps and the rumble of men's voices have been heard at all seasons and all kinds of weather, when other people have been in the house and when they haven't. 2 years ago, I did have an odd experience, however. I'd been off shopping for the day and I came home on the late boat with my bags of groceries and other things. I was the only one living in the house at the time. I unloaded the bags, brought them into the kitchen, and put them on the floor. As I was putting things away, I opened the silverware drawer. The drawer has a divider in it with separate compartments for knives, forks, and spoons to keep everything in order. When I opened the drawer, I saw that all the silverware had been messed up. Nothing was missing, but everything was out of place, as though it had just been thrown around in the drawer. I knew I hadn't left it that way, and no one else was living there. There was no rational way to explain it. And I thought that after the stories about Norman, the Mad Cook, it was an interesting occurrence. Another thing, About 4 years ago, there was a young couple living over at Bean Point at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife property. The girl worked at night at one of the restaurants. The easiest way for them to access the rest of the island was by water, because it's such a long way around by land, and so they used a kayak back and forth from the point. The closest property to theirs by kayak was, of course, the Coast Guard station. One day, the girl said to me, "Do you know that at night there's sometimes a green glow coming from the tower of the station?" I said I hadn't seen or heard of any green light yet. She said, "Oh, yes, we've seen it several times from over at the point. It starts at the base of the tower and goes up. It's very eerie." She told me that she was always skittish being on the Coast Guard property at night. It's been interesting, Mark concluded, all the different stories that have come up over the years, the various experiences that people have had at the station, the fears of the second floor, and of course, Norman, the mad cook. I think every old Coast Guard station should have a ghost. It's part of the atmosphere. I still hear the footsteps and the low, muffled men's voices from time to time on any kind of night, often when I know I'm the only person in the building. As you know, the Coast Guard building has an alarm system that detects any kind of intrusion or motion, but the noises are still there. It keeps life interesting. I'll do a one pager here. The supervisory spirit of Corneck. Dick Lemoy is a retired Rhode Island state trooper who once served as the island's police chief, and he is not afraid of much or anything. He and his wife Sheila lived on the island for many years at their house on Center Road. Sheila was the owner and originator of Sheila's of Block Island, the boutique that formerly occupied the tiny house between the Surf Hotel and the Blue Dory. Sheila's parents, the McAloons, once owned an undertaking business on Old Town Road, and her brother, Vincent McAloon, built the former Neptune House into timeshare units. Dick Lemoy loved to be on the water, and for a few summers ran fishing charter excursions on his boat. Eventually, the Lemoys sold their Block Island house and chose life on a comfortable trawler traveling between Block Island and Florida or the Bahamas every year. During their summers on the island, Dick and Sheila kept their boat at the Block Island Boat Basin and managed the marina dock for Raleigh. Since those years, the Lemoys have opted for the landlubber's life again and have built a new house on the east coast of Florida. It was during the time that Dick worked as dockmaster at the Block Island Boat Basin that he told me this story. "Some years back," recalled Dick, "I did some work on boilers in people's houses. One day, Sherm Dodge came to me and asked if I'd look at the boiler in one of the houses he took care of on the east side of Corneck Road, just across from the entrance to West Beach Road. So I told him I'd go up and take a look at it." Sherm Dodge, a direct descendant, one of Block Island's 16 founders. Trustum Dodge is the late father of Willis Dodge. Willis and his wife Edry run a B&B called Sunset Hill. "Well, I went up to the house on the neck," continued Dick, "and into the basement. I started working on the boiler, and after a little while, I got the feeling that someone was there with me, watching me. I felt that I wasn't alone. I looked around and nobody was there. So I went back to work on the boiler, and again, I got that same feeling, as if I was being watched by someone else who was in the room with me. I looked all around again, and there was still nobody there. So I finished the job, but all the time I had that feeling of someone else being there. I mentioned it to Sherm later, and he said, 'Oh, yes, didn't you know? Somebody died in that house once, hung himself in the basement. That's who it was.' I've never been back in that house since," concluded Dick, "and I've never wanted to go back. I know there was someone there with me." All right. There's more ghost stories here. There's more to read. Should we find one more quickie? I think there was something in here I wanted to read today. What one was I reading? Well, I didn't read this one, but let's try it. And this will be it for today. All right, here we go. This is from More Ghosts of Block Island by Fran Migliaccio. And this is Lorraine's Levitating Spaniels. I have another story about my house that I never told you, said Lorraine Sear to me one evening in her kitchen. It was November 8th, 2008, the 89th birthday of Lorraine's father, Ulrich Sear. Lorraine, her mother Beatrice, and her aunt Lillian Martin had all put on a surprise birthday party for Ulrich at Lorraine's house with family and close friends to help celebrate. Lorraine had made lots of pizzas designed to satisfy every conceivable taste and toppings, and there was a decorated birthday cake with candles, but not 89, for dessert. Lorraine is a breeder of Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, and 4 adult dogs joined the festivities and kept an eye on the floor cleaning detail. 2 6-week-old puppies, Honeysuckle and Rosa Ragusa, slept in the next room, with occasional toddling, sleepy forays out of bed. Guests took turns holding the plump, soft little bundles. Ulrich, who had his share of health issues that year, was looking robust and happy. He was looking forward to a trip with Bee to Florida, leaving in January to spend the rest of the winter in sunny St. Petersburg. This happened sometime in the mid-1990s, Lorraine prefaced her story. You had already written that other story about the ghosts in this house and put it in the Block Island Times, so I didn't bother to mention it to you. She continued. I had one particular dog at that time, a male black and tan King Charles. I don't remember his name, but I remember his barking. He had a barking habit, and he often barked while we were in the house when there seemed to be nothing there. Sometimes he'd bark at night, and that was annoying. One night, he was sleeping in my room with me, and he started barking in the middle of the night and then left the bed. I don't know when exactly. All I know is that I got up to use the bathroom and found the dog on top of the bathroom vanity next to the sink. He was very frightened and shivering, and he whimpered at me when I came into the room. I took him down from the sink because he couldn't get down by himself. He couldn't have gotten up there by himself either. Dogs, especially ones as small as Cavalier King Charles, can't jump that high, and there was nothing for him to jump on top of that would get him up to that sink. There was no logical way for him to be there, but he was there, and he was horribly frightened of something. I think he was barking at the ghost in the house, and the ghost got annoyed, Lorraine concluded matter-of-factly. She continued. A few years later, the exact same thing happened with another dog. She was that dog's granddaughter. She had a barking habit too, and one night I found her up on that sink, as frightened as she could be. Neither of these dogs ever barked at night again after they found themselves on top of my bathroom sink in the middle of the night. Something really gave them a good scare. When Lorraine has guests at her house, she tells them to put their coats in her bedroom on the bed. Raleigh had a fleece jacket the evening of Ulrich's birthday party, and Lillian Martin had put it in there when we arrived. When we were ready to leave, we went in the bedroom to retrieve the jacket. I want to look in the bathroom, I told him, opening the door of the bathroom that adjoins Lorraine's bedroom. I looked to the right at the sink and vanity. The bathtub was directly across from the vanity on the other side of the room. The toilet was beyond the tub in the corner. There was nothing near the vanity or sink, no stool, no other bathroom appliance that would enable a small, low-built dog to ascend to the height of the vanity top all by itself. Nothing whatsoever. All fun, 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 fun. More ghost stories to be read, 2 full books of them. We've only put a small dent into them. We'll be back with more tomorrow at 3:00 for Frankenstein Tea. Thanks so much for coming today. I hope you enjoyed. Filter back through and listen to other stories. I was thinking today, we've read some creepy stories all along. There have been some good ones. I know, so fun, right, Lars? I don't usually repeat, but there have been some good creepy ones. So there was a great Ray Bradbury one. Do you remember that one when the guest goes outside? Judy, all right, Judy. I know. So first thing, the guest goes outside and runs into the ghost. Remember that Bradbury story? That's a good one. And then there was also that one that I read recently, and I was in my mother's car at the ferry parking lot, and it was about the ghosts in the house and the guy who sees the ghosts. But then the dogs come into the room. I'm not going to talk too much about that one. I may just reread that one. Really scary story, really creepy. But Judy's on here listening, and she listened to yesterday's story, and she was talking about how her mother, right, Judy? Tell me if I get this right. Your mother always said, right, don't rock the chair, because if the chair is rocking, somebody's in that chair. And so we read another story today about a chair rocking. Judy, I don't know if you were on early enough to catch that, but Judy and I also did, there we go, Judy. Judy says I got the story right. Judy and I also had a little discussion yesterday about how we don't talk about these spirits so much anymore. We don't tell these stories so much. So, really, we're really quite grateful to Fran. I'm grateful to Fran to have documented this. We talked about them much more when I was younger here. I wonder if the kids talk about them, or if there's a sense of the spirit world out here like there used to be. Maybe we can have that discussion sometime. Maybe in the future that'll happen. We'll all be in a room and we can talk about ghosts. For now, I'll keep reading them, and I hope you'll keep listening. Thanks so much for coming. Have a great afternoon. Weather the storm, right? We're getting a little storm, I think. We're going to go pick up the outdoor furniture of the library and hunker down. So be well, be safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, eat right, sleep right, drink water, take time out, call your family, exercise. Sounds like a big list, but it's all important. Peace.